Hello, and welcome to Coffee Time. Coffee Time is a space where magical humans come together for some real talk, strong coffee, and powerful introspections on whatever is top of mind right now. My name is Natalie, and I am your host for this channel and today's super exciting conversation. The idea behind Coffee Time is that you are in your favorite coffee shop, maybe cozied up with a book, and you begin to listen in on an intriguing conversation between folks at the next table over. For that reason, there is no big introduction. We absolutely let the conversation speak for itself, and if you do want to know more about these special guests following today's episode, I invite you to check out the show notes for more details. So on that note, let's dive right in. Is it working? Oh, you're muted. Let's see. Can I hear you?
Hold
Yay!
on. Okay.
We did it! Oh
I've been on Zoom for literally like hours each day. I'm sure you know. And my computer was like, help me. So I had to restart it.
That's totally fair. And that's what I was worried about too. Was like, do I have an update? Because sometimes they're sneaky and they don't automatically push through. And I've had it before where people were trying to join and like the volume just wouldn't work. I don't even know, but we did it. We persevered.
We did.
So what time is it for you right now?
It's 11.
Okay.
I'm in Central Time.
Okay. So 2 hours ahead.
And I've moved a ton of times in my life. And this is the first time I've ever lived in Central Time. So I don't know.
Yeah. I've only ever been like, what am I even, Pacific Standard or East Coast. So yeah.
Yeah. The coast. Where are you right now?
Outside of Vancouver, up in Canada.
Oh, cool. So are you Canadian or are you?
I am.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And where are you located?
I'm in Kansas City, Missouri.
Oh, cool. Okay. Oh, I actually know someone who lives around there, which is surprising for me because I live here. Like, you know.
Right.
Yeah. But
it's such a small world, though. It's really bizarre. Like, there's just, with almost 8 billion people, there's almost no separation between us at this point.
It's true. And I mean, the internet helps with that because I don't know about you, but I meet most of my friends now online. And like, I have people from probably like groups where you and I met too, who I've now been talking to every day for like a year. We haven't met in person, but we've just become best friends. Yeah.
I have a friend like that too. I'm trying to think. Actually, I have multiple friends. And it's hard for me to think of who they are because I feel like I've met them because I talk to them so much.
Oh, I know. It's going to be weird when we actually get to meet in person.
And then they're like this tall and you're, or vice versa.
That's me. So everyone thinks that I'm like this little really feisty, like 5'4". But I'm actually like 5'11". And like,
are you really?
Yeah.
Totally think of you as like my height. I'm 5'5".
Yeah. See, there you go. Well, that's funny. My mom is like 5'4", so that you would assume, but no. Yeah, I was talking to someone recently who I met online, and that question came up, and of course they're like, "This is a trap." I was like, "Yeah, my height, like it's fine." And they guessed 5'7", which is still like not super tall, but like on the taller end of average, I think. For, a woman. So anyway, it was just kind of funny. But
so, do you remember? I mean, so I don't know how old you are. There's another awkward question.
That's fine. I'm 29.
Okay. I'm turning 40 this year. Okay. Like in a couple weeks, actually, which blows my mind. I'm like 40. Whoa.
When did this happen? That's how I'll feel at 30. And I'll have a bit of a crisis and go to a spa. And it'll be okay.
I mean, to me, it just feels like another day. I'm like, aren't I still like, I don't know how old I am. But I remember when internet dating was like super weird. Like people were like, oh my God, you met them on the internet. You must be desperate or whatever. And now it's like how everybody meets each other.
During COVID, like, what are you going to do?
I know. I know, it's crazy. So yeah, I think it's funny times and it's shifting so fast.
Mm-hmm. No, it is funny you mentioned that actually. Cause I'm like, not like actively dating, but like recently-ish single. And so navigating all of that again. And I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. But yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, so I teach like, I go all the way from teaching basic sex ed classes, which I love, because I came from a background where there was no sex ed, right?
Recovering Catholic. Yeah.
Yeah. Mormon. Right.
Yeah.
And I talk to a lot of people and they're, you ask someone, what's your sexual education? And they're like, well, abstinence only, very shame based.
Yep.
So I teach everything from sex ed, basic stuff, to like ecstatic sex, transcendent sex. And what's really interesting is there are a lot of, because things are moving so quickly, there are a lot of people who are 50s and above in age who are like, they're newly single and they have no idea what to do in dating. Like, it's just such a different world and it is changing so fast. And so it's kind of exciting for me because I love talking about it.
Right. No, me too. Because this is honestly, so I went through, you were talking about like awakenings in our little like thingy. I've gone through a big one. I honestly, like everything in my life has shifted within the last 6 months. Including like I had a business where I was doing, not like you, because I'm not like a professional in the sex ed realm and all of that, but like talking about relationships and sexuality and more of like the sacred sexuality way. Like you'll see my chakra wall behind me from my tantra book and like things like that.
I love it.
And so I was doing that. I had the podcast, all the things, and engaged. And then I got this message from my records that basically said like burn it all down, and it just kept repeating. And I was like, I have to start at the bottom. I can't keep re-articulating because it's still going to be influenced by that context, right? And so I did. In one day I was talking to one of my internet friends, and I said to her, I was like, I think I just have to let it all go. And so I like deactivated the Instagram, took down all the links, and then it was a couple weeks after that my partner broke things off between us. And like, that wasn't what I thought was in the cards, but it makes so much sense in hindsight. And so now I very much am at like I'm telling you this because I feel like this is right up your alley, the bottom of the exploration. And right now in particular, I was reminded of the meditation you sent me, doing a lot, like gradually doing a lot of trauma processing and things like that. But I think the big thing that I'm looking into now is like exploring, because I'm reading a book about this in terms of the shadow work, but like exploring kink in like every aspect of life and allowing myself to engage in that turn on through this process. And also like, it's okay to make connections while doing that deep trauma work. Just like be mindful of where you're at and what you're able to give and that kind of thing. So that's like everything that has happened in my last, like the realizations in the last 24 hours. So
I feel like I need to take notes, which
it'll be there. I just talk. Don't even worry. We're fine.
But it's also how I process and receive information. I'm like, okay, and I really want to be able to be.
Do you want a notepad? You can get a notepad. Okay.
I'm like, no, you're not on the clock. You're not doing coaching stuff. But I also, just with all the internet stuff, it is like helpful for me. So
for sure.
If I forget some of that, but
if you want to write it down, I won't be mad. Like that's totally okay.
I'm actually going to resist.
Are you okay? Because I was going to say these recordings are kind of fun sometimes because like it's not like necessarily like come on and talk like explicitly about like how you do and what you do. However, sometimes it is fun because as I share more about the stuff going on in my life as I'm comfortable, it's a chance to engage in that back and forth of like how that goes, or like, oh, you want to dive into that shadow thing? Let's just do it now. And it's fun, right? So
totally. Well, and I think the reason I wanted to take notes is because you touched on like 7 different things that I would want to dive into deeply. And I also had an idea right in the middle, and I was like, how do I, but so I'm going to invite you to something. So it's going to be awesome. I think you would love it. It's I have this because I'm an erotic blueprints coach, and that's what I thought of. I was like, oh, I have one more guest spot and I want you to take it. So
that sounds amazing.
It's going to be awesome.
I've seen some of your posts on erotic blueprint, but it's not something that I've dove into. I don't ever know what we're doing before. So that'd be super cool. Thank you.
It's for this one, it's like a full weekend. It's the weekend of my birthday. Okay. It's Halloween weekend. Oh, awesome. It's all online, but I went to last year. This is where I decided to be a coach. It's called Path to Passions. And, or Paths to Passion, Path to Passion. Anyway.
Something like that. Yeah.
I'm just going to invite you to it. It's basically like really beautiful, indulgent, like being able to play with your own erotic self for a full weekend. So
that sounds like perfection.
Yeah. But I love that you said that you were talking about your awakening, and anytime somebody like talks about their awakening, I feel just this magic, because that's how it all starts.
Mhm.
And I want to hear more. You
Oh,
know?
there's been a
Like, where
lot.
were you like, where were you before this happened? Had you heard of awakening? Had you already gone through a phase of it, or
I think I did. So if we're talking like spiritual awakening, I guess, like I went through one of those when I
yeah.
first got sober, so about 7 years ago. And I think I kind of like, as we do, I thought like, okay, wrap it up in a pretty bow, like it's done now, like everything's good, I'm fine.
Mm, mm.
Um, but no.
Right.
And so this one started back in, I mean, I think like for a lot of people, COVID, isolation, all good, don't worry. I'm like double fisting coffee and water here. Like, um, it's been a catalyst for a lot of things. And now I always say that, and also want to mention like in any of the like spiritual stuff I talk about in the context of COVID and what it's, the isolation, whatever has done for me, I don't want to discount the experiences of the most marginalized and vulnerable people. And like, I'm immunocompromised. Like there might be this spiritual path too, but I've also been at the point where I've been terrified to leave my house because people aren't taking this seriously. So like, I don't want to discount that. I just think it's important to mention. Um, but it started around the beginning, and I think, what had been happening? Oh, I started going into my Akashic records. That was where this all started for me. And through that, did a course on level 1, which is like reading for myself, because I
Mm,
had used a book and was like, something's not clicking, something's going on. So I did this course, and they were giving feedback to us when we would relay what we like received as like coaching,
mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And I was like, there's static, like there is static in the way of the messages I'm trying to get. And it turned out that I had like lower vibrational energies attached to me that had been with me for
Mhm.
like a long time.
Right.
I was terrified,
Oh.
um, like so scared. And so like within a couple of days, I had someone come over to help me like clear these things, and on I went. And then I took like a month to just focus on like grounding and protection.
Right.
Because at first I couldn't even like it, the visualization of like roots into the ground. I
Right.
couldn't even picture it.
I understand. Yeah.
Yeah. Because my friend described it as I was like living on like the middle rung. And
Yeah.
so I was like super vulnerable from like both sides.
Mm.
Um, but as I worked through that, and then I started going into the records again, and I had a gate open in my bedroom, and then we had to close that, and there was like all these things. But that was a big turning point for me because I've always felt like unsafe, like for the last, my whole 29 years. And just recently I redid my bedroom, like post breakup. That's like a thing I'm working on.
Mm.
Um, I'm finally sleeping through the night. Like I'm realizing I've never felt safe in my bedroom because there was all this stuff going on around me that I was aware of but couldn't explain.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. And so then that tying back to like more of the sexuality stuff, which it's a really good metaphor, like going into the shadows. Cause I was like, what's that
Mhm.
figure in the shadows of my bedroom? Like I have to get curious and find out, and like, I can be okay. And it's not good or bad. Maybe, we hope, like, that kind of thing.
Yes.
Um, so with that, now I'm recognizing, one, I recognize that I have a lot of unprocessed trauma.
Mm.
Um, and so that's something that's also where I'm like, I have to step back because I need to work on this. And I think that was like the first step in what is now becoming another awakening, and like integrating sexuality as well. Cause I was like, my friend commented yesterday, she's known me for years, and she's like, I like single Natalie. Single
Yeah.
Natalie's fun. Cause she's like, you have good stories. And I was like, yeah, but here's the thing. I want, not that I necessarily need, desire long-term commitment, because I don't know what that looks like right now, but I want to be able to bring the same element of turn on and kink and play into a long-term partnership if that's what I desire to move into. And so now I'm at a point of figuring out, how do I get there? If that makes sense. Yeah.
Mm.
I hope that kind of answered the question. Yeah.
Well, you did, and you brought up like 100 different questions too.
I do that. Yeah.
No, it's beautiful. I mean, here I'll just name a few things that I want to dive into, and you can tell me what sounds like
Let's do it.
So kink, because you've mentioned it a couple times, and we could even call it like the spiritual side of kink or
Mm.
existential kink. things
That's
like
the book
that.
I'm reading. Yeah.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
I haven't read it. And, entities
Mhm.
and boundaries and protection and things like that. And just kind of relationships in general. And so, yeah, tell me what feels good.
Ooh.
Or maybe we'll hit all of it. We'll just like start with one.
I think, let's see, the most top of mind, which will possibly lead to the rest, is the kink and like existential kink. I think that's really powerful. And I think so. The current connection I've made from this group I'm in on Facebook, one of our first conversations was about kink and whatever. And I sent back this like voice memo essay, and they were like, that was very well articulated.
Yeah.
Because I remember from I took a philosophy of sexuality class back in university. My degree was in philosophy, which is probably also why I'm like going like this with all these ideas. Um, and the interesting thing about that was kink was brought up as just the thing that is other. And so I think often, if we're talking like kink community, but it can appear very exclusive and like really hard to integrate into. But when we dial it back, it's like kink is anything other than what is accepted as the norm within our social settings. And so like if you grow up like hardcore Catholic, that might just to someone else be like sex outside of marriage.
Yeah.
Like it's not the like hardcore BDSM or like whatever. And I think that makes kink more accessible. And
Yeah.
maybe thinking of it that way is just a little bit different than our norm. Also, in terms of like the existential kink, makes
Yeah.
it easier to integrate into our process.
Right. Absolutely. I love that. I love that definition, or that sort of encapsulating kink as it's really accessible to all of us, and we all have this the subversive, or what would be a better word for it, the pushing the boundaries wherever our personal boundaries are, and whatever is sort of titillating, which is the best word for this discussion. Just sort of titillating in that way. And what I love about kink, especially with that understanding of it, is that so just to backtrack, because I don't know how much about the work that I do, or just really how I operate. I channel, and so I'm always getting downloads, but I can also go into a purposeful channeled place where I meditate into being able to hear. And when I go into that place, I've written a book from it, and I'm now writing my second book. And the second book, right when in fact, I'm going to pull it off. I'm just going to show you.
Yeah, do it.
So I published my first book, and I'm like laying down in bed, and truthfully, I got high. This is very irregular for me. I smoke weed maybe once a month, but I was actually building a relationship with marijuana, and it was really because I had this aversion to it. Maybe that was, something that I thought was bad, and then I built a relationship with it. So anyway, I was a little bit high, and I had just published my book, and it came through, Allison, study play. Your next book is about play. And so I wrote it down on I don't know if you can see
I love that. Yeah, I can.
like backlit or whatever.
Yeah.
Ooh, I'm like a makeup person.
I know, right?
I'm an influencer. So it says, how can I play through this whole process? Learn about play for your next book. That's what it's about. And so I had been wondering, I'd been teaching sexuality at this point, but sexuality is just like a paragraph in my first book. And I didn't know how it was all going to integrate together. I really felt like I was over here, sort of like, like on a trapeze, like I was holding onto this rung, which was spirituality. And I was holding onto this rung, which was sexuality. And I was teaching both, but I couldn't figure out how to make them seem together in my world, even though I was teaching spiritual sex and, sexual spirituality and all the things. It just didn't feel like it integrated. And I've gotten to a point now where I've been playing, and I've been studying play and learning what that means as a creator in this life. And kink plays a huge part in that, because a part of play, especially in that cosmic or consciousness realm, is about recognizing, and this might be a stretch, so I'm happy to explain how I got here, but that there really isn't a right or wrong. And when we transcend that duality, we unify everything. So nothing gets lost, it all comes together as one. And so pushing into the boundaries helps us knock away the edges of what tells us, this is not okay. Now we're gonna, a lot of people, their fear around saying that there is no right or wrong, is that they're automatically going to choose something that hurts people. Like if we don't have those moral boundaries, then how do we keep from hurting each other? Or how do we keep from doing something that's bad? Well, what actually happens is when we transcend duality, it is a higher consciousness state. And we reach this place where we don't have a desire to do something that's going to hurt ourselves and others. We also perceive what hurting someone else really is, right? So,
Totally.
yeah.
No, that completely makes sense to me. And, it reminds me, if we bring it to like maybe a more practical kind of level, not that that wasn't to me,
Yeah.
but, it reminds me of how I've talked to you about moving from the church. And because within the church, and I would assume can probably relate to this, it's very clearly spelled out what is good and what is other. And the thing is, everything in that other category is wrong. There's no room to articulate for yourself what that looks like in an acceptable way. And so I think that what you're talking about is that act of figuring out what that, not even middle ground, but it's like there's the good from their perspective, there's the other, and then there's like, I can be over here doing my unique thing, and that's like totally acceptable and awesome. And for me, the big thing that came up with that, especially back when I was in the church, was like, well, if I'm over here, I don't have this community anymore. But what was pointed out to me recently, I was doing a social justice seminar. And one of the things that came up was like, well, I'm an individual recovering from this oppressive system. There are other individuals to build this community with, and then enter like communities like you're talking about, of like all the individuals who have decided like, hey, this framework of good isn't serving me. So I'm going to create my own, or discover my own, or whatever it is. Cause like, I think it's already there. We just step into it. Right. And with all those individuals though, we do create that community, and like, there is a place to belong. And I think that's also really powerful, because like, we don't have to recover from that alone.
Yeah.
It can feel very isolated at the beginning, because this was the only subset of people I was used to being like judged by or accepted by.
Yeah. Yeah. And acceptance and being accepted by people so often feels like we're doing the right thing. Like we translate that as good, when I mean, I guess it makes sense. Like a lot of those morals are built on how to keep a society together, and personally, I am really feeling this. I kind of want to pause and like hear the best way to put this. So like no more communities, meaning relating to everyone as because I'm present with them in that moment, right? And so not jumping from one community to another, although that feels good. When I went through my awakening, I actually I pretty much lost all of my friends, because I shifted so much that I was almost unrecognizable.
Right.
And I couldn't relate, and they couldn't relate. And there was this period of a lot of loneliness. And I think, I guess I just want to point that out, that what happens, or what can happen, is that we then find the resonance within us that helps us not be against anything. So I'm not against the Mormon church, and I'm not against people who practice kink, but I'm also not, part of anything. I'm just here. I'm present with every moment, So that feels important to me to say.
Yeah, no, I
you know,
really like that. And I think, yeah, just the idea of showing up present. And that for me is where I've integrated, like if we go back to that like sexuality and like spirituality,
Right.
is that showing up present for, I mean, everything in life, but like if we dial it back to like physical stimulation, like showing up present for that and like what my body wants as I'm
Mhm.
exploring with a partner. And I think that's the biggest thing if I go to like what I'm currently realizing about my tendencies and things I need to process is at a certain point in a relationship, whatever
Yeah.
that point is, it's kind of arbitrary. Um, when there's more like life stuff integrated, it's
Yeah.
really easy to get out of that presence in those moments of connection. And that's what I'm currently reflecting on is like, how can I let myself show up? And
Mhm.
so if it's like the desire to like, I don't know, send a picture and realize that the fear coming up is actually excitement. It's not the fear I need to listen to like deter me from it. Right. And so it's like, well, can I lean in and just fucking do it? And apparently I can. So like let's keep rolling, Yeah. Yeah.
Single you is really exciting.
It really is. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to say that in like a disrespectful way, because like, obviously, um, partnership me, like I'm really grateful for
Sure.
everything. Like I don't want to say it that way, but
No, I definitely hear you.
and now it's like, how do I just keep this going? Because I think a lot of these things coming up is truly me. And so I want to be able to maintain that while dealing with the life shit that happens.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. And one of the things that presence is kind of I love that you connected it right there with sexuality and relationship. Because one of the things when I start talking to couples who I'm going to work with,
Mhm.
um, or even individuals, one of the questions that I really like to ask is, have you reached a transcendent or a timeless moment during lovemaking? Like, have you been able to have, and I want to hear from you, have you been able to have, right? And this is a personal question. Um, so, have you reached one of those moments where you're outside of the realms of time
Mm.
together, and it's that transcendent moment where, oh, and it's so good. Um, where you're able to really just it's deep presence,
Mhm.
you know?
Mhm. The way I always say is like it's the moments where I can completely slip out of thinking and be like solely in feeling. I always said to people when they like talk to me about the stuff they wanted to try and I remind myself of this too, is like if you think about it, this is how I describe it at least. If you think about it, sex is always like a little bit gross and weird because you're not meant to think it, like you're meant to feel it. That's
Ooh,
how I kind of,
yeah.
speak about it. But I guess to add to that, because that question hits a couple of things. Like my most recent partner, I am very convinced was my twin flame.
Mm,
So I had that experience from the moment I looked into his eyes.
absolutely.
Um, and it was interesting because I described that moment, and I've had pieces come up that I wrote over the years. I'll have to like send you one at some point because I think you'd be interested in how I like described it before I'd even heard the term twin flame.
Yeah,
And then it was
beautiful.
actually post breakup. I was doing a journal under the full moon, and that word came up, and I was like, "What is this?" And then I was voice memoing one of my internet friends who's like big in the spiritual stuff, and he referenced twin flame, and I was like, "I never said that." And then I looked it up, and I was like, "Oh shit, like that's what's going on." And it really is. It's like that feeling of your soul coming home. And so I would say in the recent times, because I was processing a lot, not so much, but I would say definitely that experience has happened because for me, it's like when I do think back on like sexual experience with my like prior partner, and I don't know if you get this, but when you think back on it and like you instantly have the full physical sensation through your whole body.
so good.
Right? Yeah. And just like the tingles everywhere. And you're like, woo, okay.
You just did it. You just, no, but it's true. It's true. I mean, it really, all of this pleasure lives in us in that timeless space all of the time.
Mhm. I love
All of the time in the timeless space. So hard to talk about some of these things because we just don't have the words.
it's like when people talk about like the records talking about time, but
Yeah.
like there is no time. So
Right.
what's really happening there? And I think because we're this is my thought so far, we're interpreting energy, right? Like you channel, you interpret energy.
Totally.
So to me, that's like my mapping of like a human physical experience onto what that energy is saying, because I probably can't compute what it actually means.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There are times when I'm channeling, and so I have a full chapter in my first book on time, and
I think I need to read this book. We'll talk after. Yeah. And I can link it and everything too. But yeah.
Well, I will send it to you. And so there's a whole chapter about time, and it's, like I said, this new book about playing with time, really learning how to bend time and move it and let it warp in a way that we're perceiving it from that higher perspective and moving it ourselves. Woo. And just like talking about it it's just like so exciting. It feels so good. But there have been times when I channel, and what's coming through, I literally have to say, can you explain this in a different way? Can you tell me again? And whomever I'm connecting with will say, we're trying to communicate something to you that your brain is literally not yet wired for. Right? So we're in this game with limitations because we want to play this game. And a lot of us are sort of popping through that veil and going, oh, now I'm going to play the game with this perception.
Yeah.
And this still applies, but how can I use these tools in this realm, and play more consciously and be able to like really move matter according to what feels good for us to play with,
I really like that. I was reminded of a message that I got a couple times over now, and I think you'll really like it. Which this is not verbatim because I wrote it down somewhere and I can't read my handwriting, so I'm fucked. But basically, I just started to deactivated all of my Instagrams. I just started one that's like private and it doesn't even have my face on it, to write down the messages that I get, because I can't read my writing. So when things come through and I'm like, I need to know that, and I'm kind of documenting my journey through this for myself. So I started one just for that. But the message basically was like, your physical body is your roadmap to the ethereal experience. Like, because it's like, now I have tingles everywhere because it's true. It's like my body, those physical prompts are what helped me to engage in that like spiritual way, like with connecting, with channeling, like whatever it is. And I think often I've noticed, at least, there's this pull, and the book I'm reading now, and back to the kink thing, it makes sense, like this all love and light and off we go. And it's like, I want to live outside the physical experience and like transcendence. Yes. But don't devalue the tool that is your physical presence in this world, because your soul needs that to be here. So like it's necessary to this experience and to bridging that gap and to unifying those different realms, if that makes sense.
Completely. Oh, so much. So I had what I call a spiritual awakening, or a sexual awakening. Sorry, you're like, yeah, I heard that. So I had my spiritual awakening, and then I married my twin flame, and we were together for 4 years. He's still my BFF. We talk all the time, but we actually got divorced this summer.
Okay.
Which it still pulls on my heart a little bit, but I mean, our bond is cosmic. It's so beyond that. Right. And so, but we did choose to do the whole human marriage thing. And I know why we did it. We met in person before I went through my awakening. And then he went to South America, and we reconnected after my awakening. So pre-awakening, I thought this guy is a super weirdo. I really thought he was super I didn't like him, actually. We got in kind of a fight the first time that we hung out. And I was like, I do not like this guy, as I told my boyfriend at the time. And then we reconnected online as he is in South America and I had just started my awakening, and we were engaged 10 days later. Within 10 days, I proposed to him because I absolutely knew there was no question. I was like,
Yep.
my grandmother and the angels are all speaking to me and singing.
I get
So,
that feeling.
yep.
Yep.
So we got married within 6 months, and I knew that we had to, because as soon as we were in person with each other, I was like, oh, this is why we've got to be engaged. We fought like crazy. Like the most painful fighting I've ever experienced is in that relationship. And it was so painful because every mean word, everything that came from that egoic place felt like a knife in my own heart, right? Because we had to knock away, and we were both really stubborn. We still are, but we know how to navigate it.
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't know my former partner's moon and ascendant, but he's a Taurus cusp Gemini and I'm a Leo. So
oh my God, that's like fire. Well, it's not actual fire signs, but it's just Wind is a Gemini and I'm a Scorpio. So we were just like, what are we even doing together?
Yeah.
But it was so magical. I can't quite remember why I went down this path. But anyway, what was I saying before this? We separated, and why did I even bring that up?
Marriage was important and you fought a lot. And
maybe that's the whole point. I don't know. We were talking about existential kink before that. And
we're here for a while. We can come back. Don't worry.
Okay.
We can just talk as long as this goes too. I'm not putting a cap on things. So yeah. That does make sense. And when you mentioned that feeling of knowing, I definitely experienced that as well. And what I'm kind of learning, and it's twofold. One is, I think the last 4.5 years, because that's how long we were together, needed to happen in the way that it did.
Totally.
Definitely parts of me that, and I think that's more ego. It's difficult. So from a recovery standpoint, ego's always edging God out or whatever. And it's, but I think ego in this sense is more the part of me that is purely in the physical realm and not connected to the spiritual side of things in that moment.
Yeah, totally. Ego's awesome. Ego's like, I'm playing the game and I don't care anything.
And from that side, I think, and it's true, I wish that to an extent, there's the two parts. I wish that we hadn't hurt each other in the ways that we did. That being said, I fully can see, and I think this is where at this point I've reached at least a certain level of acceptance and grounding around it all. I see why we both needed everything that we got from each other and took from each other in those 4.5 years, including the experience of how this chapter of our time together ended. And for me, that feeling that I know this is where I'm supposed to be, it's just re-articulating now. Now is where we get to figure out what does this relationship turn into? And maybe it is you talked about best friends or travel buddies or the international border being closed puts a damper on that right now, but in the States. But I don't know. I think it's just about me realizing I wasn't wrong in feeling that in my soul. Cause it's when people say, maybe you know this, what people would say, oh, having your heart broken. It's it's not my heart. This is my soul and I can feel it. But it's just recognizing my soul, my knowing was not wrong. It's just different than what I interpreted it to mean.
Yeah. I love that. And so I always just want to let it actually land, because it actually draws me back to, I remembered why I even brought that up. And it was because it all weaves together. There are no wrong choices. Everything is serving a purpose. Everything is connected. But there are infinite choices. And what I was going to say is I went through my sexual awakening after my twin flame and I separated. So we were separated for 2 years before we divorced, and we had a separation ceremony. Yeah, when we actually separated. It was really beautiful. And I remember distinctly being given the information, you too can choose to go through the learnings that you need to together or separate.
Mhm.
And because we kind of couldn't, and I see in retrospect, and it's taken me years to see this, that it was really me. It was me. I couldn't, and it all had to do with sexuality.
Mm.
I couldn't let myself go there with him. I just couldn't. And I see the perfection of it now, because also I'm queer, so I date, every different gender. And I love those
Another topic we can discuss after.
Yes. One of my favorites. It's like the idea that we can have transcendent sex with someone with the same gender or sexuality or genitalia as us was like something I truly didn't believe until I experienced it.
Mm-hmm.
I thought you need a penis and a vagina, and that's going to complete the circuit. And that's Tantra. And you see all these like pictures of like one penis person and like 3 beautiful nymphs. And that's the only thing that you know of, right?
Sorry, that was good. Have you read Urban Tantra?
No, I haven't.
Okay, that just as a tangent, because I think it's important to that reference, because I definitely have a big issue with the fact that in a lot of these conversations of masculine, feminine energy, it gets equated with a binary gender,
Yep.
which is not at all accurate. And this book is really good at, one, integrating Tantra into BDSM. It talks a bit about that, but also taking Tantra away from physical anatomy. So it breaks it down to like people with pussies and people with penises and makes it accessible.
Yeah.
And there's
I want to read it.
Actually a training that I had signed up for, but then COVID happened. So like in the coming years, I think, that's a plan of something I want to do. Yeah, because I did orgasmic meditation before, like with my partner.
I've heard of that. Yeah.
So we did that our first year together. I haven't been practicing, but I definitely feel a draw to Tantra. But that is like, that's a whole bigger conversation. Like the way that gets broken down is it's so problematic and makes it so inaccessible. And it just really irks me. So I had to point that out and reference that book. Yes.
I adore that, because actually I feel so drawn to trans and non-binary communities, because there's this part in me that really feels like, I don't know, I almost don't want to say it this way. It's part of our evolution, and I guess I don't want to say it that way because it almost commodifies it or something like that.
No, I get what you mean. It's difficult sometimes to put into words the feeling, right? But no, I think at the baseline of it, though, it's important. I mean, everyone needs opportunity to engage in this work, and there's a very clear way that we can make it more accessible. So we need to learn to do better.
Right.
Like a baseline, like, right? Like, yeah.
And also I just feel like the beings who take that on as part of their life story are moving us forward. So that's a better way, I think, a more concise way for me to say that. I think it's like star seeds and just sort of a new spiritual technology coming through in people expressing these gender identities. And there's something really important about it, that on that spiritual level, it's so holy. And I want us to be hearing the people going through these experiences as leaders, because they're moving us forward, in so many different capacities as individuals, right? So I feel so grateful, that's what it draws out in me. It's just this feeling of gratitude, like, you're giving us the next piece. Thank you. Because it's not easy. I'm positive it's not easy,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, I just got tingles everywhere. Oh no, I love that. I absolutely love that. But I interrupted your story about nymphs. Sorry. The person with the 3 nymphs. Because I want to hear how that ended.
No, I think that story was done. I think I was just saying, I'll tell you, like, the first time, it's taken me a long time. So I'm dating truly an absolutely amazing woman right now, and who's totally lighting me up, who's totally teaching me brand new things.
Mhm.
But this has been such a process for me, because when I first started dating not cis men when I was like 20.
Mm.
And I'm turning 40 this year, right? So it's taken me so long to even be able to conceptualize a healthy, and then beyond that, a spiritual connection with someone who's not a man. Um, and so I think it's really important to tell people that like you can have these amazing, transcendent, sexual, holy, beautiful, healthy relationship experiences with anyone. You know what I mean? You can just really, you can meet people. We're souls, with these bodies that we're operating with. So and maybe for a lot of people, it's like, well, yeah, of course. But for me, it literally blew my mind. I remember someone that I was dating, and we were having sex, and I, I'll get really explicit.
Please do.
It
I've been alone a long time. It's fine.
I'll just share these stories. And I'll show you. So she was, like pleasuring me, and connected to my G spot, or, I know there's a lot of talk about that, but it is, a center where there's a lot of like stuff going on, a lot of nerve endings. It's also a spiritual portal.
Mm.
All of those spots are spiritual portals. Really, our chakras are nerve plexuses. So when we connect the physical body, a lot of those portals, or those energy centers, are really mapped out in the physical body as well. And so yeah, she hit that spot, and I had my first transcendent experience with another person who, like I said, is they were non-binary. And so that was huge for me, and it actually made me very emotional. So I want to mention this, like, just as an aside, if you do open up one of those portals in your body, a lot of times it's like an energy release. You can get really emotional, you can get super high and then kind of crash, so all of those things. I just want to describe it in case people are not sure
What's going on with me? Yeah.
right.
Totally. Yeah, like I did breath work the other night, and it's a breath work followed by Reiki session. And my cat was like starving. So between the two, I got up quickly to feed him. I couldn't walk. Like
Wow.
it felt like I was in another dimension. My legs were shaky. I was like tipping all over the place. Like it was the weirdest experience. And like, I was definitely not drunk. So I think it's important to recognize that, and recognize like people experience these things in different ways. And that's the other part about it, right? It's like, well, maybe you will, but chances are you're not going to read someone's experience of some like transcendent orgasm thing, right, and like also point out that like orgasm and climax are not the same thing.
I love that.
Like you're not going to read it and experience it like verbatim. Like that's not how that goes. It could be completely different. It could be, for some people, right, it might be this like really big energetic experience. And maybe for you, it's just like a feeling of calm that you haven't experienced before, and just like let that go. But it's interesting what you're mentioning, because my first sexual experience was with a woman. Woman, I normally say girl because I was 15, but
right.
first dated women.
Right.
And then if we're talking like back to the talk of like communities and othering and that kind of thing too, it was like, okay, I am a lesbian. I have a place that I fit. Because also, and this wasn't even that long ago, it's like 14 years ago, but there wasn't really, bisexual still wasn't very accepted. And I think
I totally get it.
and there wasn't a word like queer, like,
Yep.
So when I made the shift to being interested in men at the time, I really lost that community.
I know there's a lot of, I remember that too. I just want to mention that because, like I'm like a generation previous to you, where if you were dating women and you said that you also dated men, you really were kind of knocked out of that community. Yep. They didn't like that. They were like, oh, you're going to eventually leave me for a man.
And like, that's still a thing. Like there are these, it almost is. It's like there's even like that binary within the queer parts of the queer community. And there's, like people think it's just all accepting, but like no, like transphobia exists everywhere, like those kinds of things. But and I'm not really someone to talk too much about that because I don't have those experiences. But with this, at least, it was like, okay, now I'm over here, and now I'm like, because it was something I had talked to my prior partner about, was like, well, I'm not straight. Like, how one was like, how do I engage in a heteronormative relationship when I'm not heterosexual? Because I can't lose that part of my identity. Like, people need to see that part of me because I need to see that part of me. And the interesting thing was, when I was in the points of our relationship where I was showing up for that and talking about it, the sex got better. Because I was allowing all of me to be there, right? Like there wasn't this piece lingering in the shadows in the background. And now I just downloaded Tinder. And I'm like only talking to women. And I'm like, as of now, at least we'll see if they back out, but I'm meeting someone next week for coffee. But like, I haven't gone on a date with a woman since I was like 19 years old. This is like a decade later.
I totally get it. I did something similar.
Yeah, it is exciting. So I'm in a place of like rediscovering what that looks like now as an adult, I guess. And also as someone not in the party scene, because that's another thing I think in that community, at least my experience has been, there's a really big chunk that is very much into the partying, and like that's not me. Like I want to go get coffee. So how does that play out? And I'm learning.
Right. There's a lot of alcohol in queer communities because previous to everything shutting down, where do we meet each other? It's like one bar in every city, and sometimes it's just like all of the gays, right? Excited for your dates.
I'm a little nervous, but it'll be fun.
Yeah. Oh my God, I love it. Aww.
It's that, like, I think like you had mentioned, like if we're talking about like those boundaries and exploring outside of them, right? Like it can seem like this big scary thing, but it's like I'm legitimately meeting someone for coffee. Like it's not a big scary thing. But it is still allowing myself that play and exploration in a way that still feels safe. And that's important too, as we figure that out.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Yay.
We'll see. I'm like, but yeah.
Oh my God. Oh, I love that. Yeah, dating by itself is a big yeah. I mean, I love what you said about excitement. I used to say excitement is, or no, nervousness is excitement waiting to be explored. That's what it is.
I like that a lot. Yeah. Because I think there's like the fear that like actually is like self-preservation, like life-saving fear.
Right.
And then there's the fear that I've talked about this so many times, but it's like the fear that often actually points to the truth. And like once you move through it into that light, like it's so beautiful and amazing. And like I don't know, the words coming up right now, it sounds so cliche, but like you find yourself there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We're compelled for a reason. We have this endless curiosity and we're drawn to things because we know that they're going to edify us and that we're going to have fun learning through it. Even if that fun on a human level looks really messy, because sometimes it hurts. Sometimes it's like, oh, that was a lesson, but I know I reach these states when I'm channeling where I go above or just, I want to say beyond, not above, because it's not like a hierarchy, but I go beyond that human perception. And I have to tell people, like I'll do channeling circles and I'll say at the beginning, I might laugh or I might cry. And it's because I'm at this different perception. So if you tell me an experience that feels very real to you, and excuse me, I'm wheezing, and then I laugh, please try not to be offended, because what's happening is I'm seeing it from that perspective that's not attached to what you're feeling. And I see the joy in it from the soul perspective. you know?
I think that's a really important like disclaimer to give, because I've noticed that too. The more that I'm leaning into my intuition and the like, I think it's like claircognizance that kind of comes up, it can be very jarring to the emotional human experience. And
Yeah.
like I have some friends where I'll be like voice memoing them and they're like, I can hear you holding back. Like, just let it out. Like, it's fine.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, as long as we have that understanding, because I also am like, spiritual bypassing is a thing and I don't want to be that person. So
Right.
I think it's important for sure to give that disclaimer, especially when people aren't like enmeshed in that type of exploration. Um, because I would never want to like discount someone's emotional experience or like how fatigued they are or like any of that. And I also recognize there's likely value if this message is coming through.
Yeah.
So kind of figuring out what that looks like and how to relay it, I guess.
Yeah. It is. I think in terms of like density realms, like 3D, 4D, and all of
Mhm.
that, they function under very different structures, like very different. And it's almost like it's like a reverse mirror, and then the mirror reverses again. My
Mm.
experience is like 3D, and then you go up to 4D, and it's like a fun house. It's kind of a house of mirrors.
That sounds terrible to me. I don't know. You might be like interested in this. I just took all the mirrors out of my bedroom. It's like my camera is just gonna stay. I'll just fucking ignore it. Whatever. Because in redecorating my room, I went and I'm still working on it, but it's feeling a lot better. And I went very intuitively. So like I went to the store to like buy a couple things, and like I go by feeling a lot of the time. And even like buying stuff online, I can normally feel when it's the thing I'm supposed to buy. So I'd
Yeah.
like touch an object and walk away and like just see what made sense. And like with that, I also moved some things into the room because for the wedding, I had this chalkboard that's like a frame chalkboard. It's really beautiful. And I was like, oh, I can make this really cool like display and put like a phrase on it and whatever. And it would have looked amazing, but I put it in there and I even cleansed it. And I was like, this is not meant to be mine. Like I just knew. So I took it out, but I took out all the mirrors.
Yeah.
I took out all the mirrors and it feels like a lot better there. So when you say that, though, like that's like a special type of hell to me. Like to have mirrors.
I totally get it. Well, and it's yes, I love that about the mirrors. There was a period in my life where, where you go to hotels and why do they always have a mirror at the other side of the bed, right? And I'm like, I
It's the
can't
worst
sleep.
place ever.
It's the worst, and I literally would
Just come, spirits, watch me sleep.
Right, they are portals. So yeah, I was just like, I'd have to cover that mirror up, but it is really interesting because a lot of people go through awakenings, and this is something that I'm really passionate about. They go through an awakening and they go into that fourth dimension,
Mm.
and it feels like that's it,
Mhm.
right? So they're in this house of mirrors. All of a sudden, they're seeing spirits. They're having all of these experiences that are really intense, and what it does if we stop there is it keeps us sort of fighting,
Mhm.
right? So we're always pushing against something
Mm.
and we're othering,
Makes sense. Yeah.
right? But there's more beyond that house of mirrors, right? So the fourth dimension can also have some really beautiful things in it, but beyond that house of mirrors is the unification of duality. And that's where the peace is, and that's where the laughter comes from.
Yeah.
And so if we're having a hard time, we're fighting demons, we're protecting ourselves, we're cleansing, we're doing all of those things.
It's exhausting.
It's exhausting.
So
And there's
exhausting.
a more efficient way, and that way is to find ourselves into that place of non-duality
Mhm.
where we don't need to fight anything because we're unified.
No, that all on like a very practical level in my world
Right.
makes a lot of sense. Because yeah, I think I was hovering there without knowing it for a long time.
And that's a scary place to hover.
Yeah, there was a lot.
Yeah.
And I've been, I mean, like all people have this, but like I've received the message many times when people were like, your light is like ridiculously strong and like you need to be careful. Like, especially when I was hovering in that realm, like I was just like a beacon to fucking everything. Um, and like the one thing that happened recently, I had a jewelry box from when I was a kid, and it was sitting at a point where the mirror did point to the side of the bed that my partner used to sleep on.
Mhm.
And that's a spot where I was getting a lot of things happening. So when the gate opened in the corner of my bedroom, my experience was like I had it was like a kid tapping your leg and like, are you up? Are you up? Like that when I was like about to fall asleep. But then there was one morning too where, oh, and my guide's here now. Where I
Oh.
felt like I heard a click like beside my head, and I like jolted awake and I saw a shadow on that side of the bed and then it disappeared. I have chills everywhere. That's like, yeah, you're right. That's what happened. And it was there. And the other thing I realized recently was the gate. I'm just rambling now, but the gate opened in the corner of the room where my partner used to sit and like game when I was like working here. He'd be in there gaming, and he was dealing with a lot of like his own emotional, like he's 24. So I think he's going through his like first awakening and like existential crisis right now. So there was some, we'll just put it as there were some very heavy thoughts happening in that corner that I think he was not equipped to deal with.
Got it.
And so I'm like, oh, that like pulled this stuff in. But then I realized I had the mirror there, and I put sigils on all my mirrors recently because I had my first experience crossing a spirit, and I was in my records when I did it, but I had the pull. I just knew I had to. I was in my bathroom just standing there, but I was told that I had to open my eyes and look in the mirror. And I don't know if you've done that. I don't recommend it if you don't have to, because it actually felt like there was a veil between me and the mirror. Like my eyes looked different. Like it was very odd. And then the next night I saw a post online that like mirrors could be portals. And I never really knew that. I just knew creepy things about mirrors, like Bloody Mary style. I was like, oh, I should probably close all those up. So like went around with the sigils, but it wasn't until I covered that mirror in my bedroom on that little jewelry box that I could, that the room felt okay.
Yeah.
So now I'm getting rid of the jewelry box.
You're like, I'm cleansing everything.
Well, a lot of that furniture, like I still have my childhood furniture because it's like solid wood and it's in good condition. It had been in my house, like all of my houses, but specifically a house I was in when my parents were divorcing and when there was a trickster. And it had been after me, like calling my name under the door at night. Like seeing things standing, but like that, I drew a map of that house with like where all the entities were, and I could label them as like age and like gender and all of that. But I also remember on this map, there was the man at the end of my bed, and he kept me safe. And what I learned very recently was that is my guide, and he has always been at the end of my bed, keeping me safe.
Beautiful.
And that was pretty amazing because it happened recently where I saw him again, and I hadn't for years. And I don't normally, like, I'm not a very visual person anymore. But it's been like with all these changes. And now when I go to sleep at night, I don't have to like announce my boundaries and like things like that. Like I can just be like, sup guide, you got my back. Okay. This is my jam. And the thing, you'll find this entertaining. All these things. Cause you talked about like the warding, and like I have wards up. You can't probably see it, but they're over there and whatever. Love me here. So I shared this story on the episode I did. It's called Stepping into the Fifth Dimension. I'll share it again here because I think you'll find it entertaining. The first time I connected with my guide, like knowingly, was through a friend. She came to help me clear out those energies that were here. And he was like, she needs to start talking to me. Like, I'm getting frustrated. Like, tell her to like do this shit, like whatever. And I was like jokingly, like very tongue in cheek, was like, well, then tell him to stop showing up when I'm masturbating. And he was like, sorry, I didn't know that was inappropriate. And I was like, so you were there? Like, really? Really funny. And then I went to the park like that week because I was working on like my chakra cleansing and like just continuing that work, right? And I was there doing a meditation, and it got to the sacral chakra. Oh, wait, this is the other thing. She was like, how should she connect with you? And he was like, water. And my friend was like, is there another way? Because like she hates water. And he's like, no, water. So I'm doing this meditation, and it gets to the sacral chakra, and it's like, the element is water. And I was like, well, fucking played. Like, but now sometimes I'll get the intuitive hit, and whatever you want to call it, that's what I call it because people use that word. I don't really like saying it that way, but I don't really know what else to say yet because it's all very new. And my guides, my whatever, wherever it's coming from, will actually tell me that I need to masturbate as a way to reinforce the boundary around myself and my home and to reclaim my space. And so when I'm engaging, and it's not always like some super like sensual, well-planned activity, like this could just be before bed and like it's a little like, you know, well-powered battery operated quickie and like whatever. But as I'm doing it and focusing my energy down to like, I don't know, my pussy, my clit, whatever. And that point of connection, I'm also picturing that bubble of protection around my home and like connecting those energies.
Beautiful. I love that. I love that. I picture, orgasm as this sort of um, like seismic wave
Mm.
that comes out in all
Mm-hmm.
directions. So that makes perfect sense that is your boundary. And I want to just bring this up when you were talking about your guide that stands at the foot of your bed, and then you were talking about the protection bubble. To simplify it, but also sort of change the feeling of it. It is boundary. All it is love. Like it's only ever love. And so, especially since we were just talking about like all these spirits and things like that, and people may be going through that and they may feel really helpless in it.
It's scary.
It feels scary.
Yeah.
And the most efficient boundary is always only love. In fact, the Hoponapona Prayer, which is something that I think a lot of people don't fully understand. They resist it because why would I say I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you to an entity or to someone who's hurt us and things like that, is because it connects us. I've actually been told it's a karmic clearing. And it puts us into that fifth dimensional place where if we're really sincerely doing this prayer, we are then in that unified space of I'm no separate than you. There's nothing to fear. Nothing can hurt me because I'm an eternal being. I have only love in this sphere. And then, it's really boundaries are, if we elevate that idea, it is the law of attraction, that what we feel for ourselves is what can be in our space. And so it's really powerful to just know that it's all love.
Yeah.
It's just
I do still have a bag of sulfur just in case. I'm not even kidding. Cause like, you know what? There was a lot of activity going on here and I did have to do a banishing ritual and some other stuff. Cause like it was all new. So like
totally.
Sometimes firmer boundaries are necessary. If you have something demonic going on, you might want to look into that. But like, yes, at the same time, yes. And I think at a baseline of it, cause it's like, at least for me, the thought of like it being love when I think this thing is here to like attack me was like,
it's hard to get there.
Good. Right. But I think also what my friend had said, because I was so scared the night that I cleared this spirit or helped it move on, because I did help it cross over, which was like wild because I was like, I'm not doing this. What's going on here? He suggested I go into my records to do it. And I was like, you want me to go into my records at 9:00 at night? What is this? What is this tomfoolery? And he's like, well, the records is love. Like you are safe there. And that was actually something really difficult for me to think of for so long because I'd thought that before. Yet when I was in there, these lower vibrational energies were talking because I was hearing their static. And so I was like, but if they could be there before, then how is that safe? And I had to trust that. And I think even if I can't understand how like expressing love to this thing could help it, recognizing that love helps me feel secure is like a good baseline to have, right? Like that. And it's not love like necessarily like I love you. It's letting myself sit in the feeling of love. So like doing
it's
like
a vibrational state.
Yeah. And figuring out what that is for you is really powerful. Like I did that recently and the only thing I could think of was my cat. So I sit and I think about like on every episode. And like how it feels in my body and letting myself be there is like a way of that kind of being protected in a sense.
Yes. Beautiful.
See, we touched on all the points that you listed.
We did. I knew we would.
Yeah. And I feel like there's so much more we could talk about.
Yes.
Well, I love all of this. I want to be mindful of your time too, but is there anything like if you want to just take a second coming through that you're like, this is a lingering thing we need to dive into? Like, how are you feeling?
Yeah, I feel good. And I know this is not a place for advertisement at all. And I'm not bringing this up to say that, but the name of my book is The Era of the True Creator.
Cool. Oh, I love
And
that.
so, yeah. And so much of what we touched on, especially what we talked about here at the end with boundaries and things like that. And if I went over that too quickly,
Mhm.
and it seems like, why the fuck are you talking about love when we're talking about demons? And
We might
that's
need to
just
do a whole other episode on that. I'm not gonna lie to you.
I'm into it. I'm into it because truly I it's such a message for me to let people know how all of this works. I had, and I'll talk about it in the next time we talk, because I've had some truly terrifying demonic experiences.
Oh boy. Yep.
And and look at me, like, sitting here laughing about it, because after that I was told, like, what all of that means, and I was told how to transcend that.
Mhm.
And now, I see the game. I
Mhm.
really was able to see different layers of the game and how it all fits together,
Mhm. Mhm.
and why I'm not scared at all for any of these things,
That
right?
no, that and yeah, it probably is a whole other conversation, but that definitely resonates. I was given a message recently that like kind of plays off of that, of basically like energies all coexist,
Yes.
and it's not like this is my space and this is yours, and kind of figuring that out. It came up much more eloquently when I wrote it down. I don't remember, but that
Sure does.
yeah, they when the spirits talk, it sounds a lot better. But it was similar to that, is just like recognizing, like, the way it's coming through right now is like, I don't have ownership of this plane,
Mm,
but in a really comforting way.
mm.
And so long as I was, like you said before, so long as I'm fighting against it, like that fourth dimension, fighting the mirrors and the whatever, as long as I'm fighting against it, I probably won't feel safe and I won't feel peace.
That,
Um,
yeah.
and it's like force protection rather than, um, not like passive protection, but like almost surrender as a form of protection, right? Like when I fully integrate.
That's it. That is absolutely it.
That just, I don't know where that came from, so I'm just gonna trust it. Yeah.
I think that's the note that we end on, because that is absolutely it. And also, I know you have a rainbow on your wall behind you, but you have like a rainbow aura, like, extending
Oh,
right here.
I
At
can't see that
your,
stuff. That's fascinating.
yeah. I was like, ooh,
What does
it's
that
like,
mean?
I don't know, just beauty, just like this iridescent rainbow coming out of
Oh,
the opposite side of your part, because I know you're opposite me. So if your part's over here, it's coming out. Yes.
okay. Hmm.
It's
That's
really pretty.
thanks.
There is actually it's been a while. Oh, I'm gonna have to dive into my book. I'm gonna send you a copy.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, and I'm gonna message you because I have an idea in my head already about something, but
Okay.
we can connect on all the things. I have really enjoyed everything in this conversation. Like,
Yeah.
I honestly was super excited to talk to you before, even though we've never talked before.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm just really grateful for everything that came up and for you making this time, and that we, at least in my mind, are now internet friends. So,
I agree. Thank you for inviting me. And this is
course.
really fun. And the format that you take on for this too is really great, where it's just like, let's just hang.
It's what I love, honestly. And that's where this all started, was legitimately like having conversations with my friends, like in actual coffee shops. And we'd
Yeah.
get on these tangents and be like, fuck, why didn't we record that? And
Yeah.
so now I basically get to have like a bunch of blind dates with people
Yeah.
and just like see what comes up. And it's like, it's really fun. And like, that's pushing a boundary, right? Like random
Yeah.
conversation about
Yeah.
kink with someone I've never met.
I
Ayo.
know, I know. And there's so much more too that we could dive into. So we'll
Yeah.
have more conversations. But
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. Like, I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode of Coffee Time. Before you leave, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And if today's show resonated, I invite you to drop into the comment section and share whatever personal introspection came up for you today. Anything you can do to help make the show more accessible is super duper appreciated. Until next time, I am your host and coffee drinking companion, Natalie, wishing you a beautifully caffeinated day.